My legs felt like someone had swapped them out for concrete blocks. That's how it started, really. Not with a bang, but with a throbbing ache that never quite left. 72 years old, and my body, which used to be my best tool, was now just a pile of worn-out parts. 45 years under the hood of cars, you know. My hands, stained forever with oil and grease, could fix just about anything. A carburetor, a transmission, a sputtering engine on a Sunday afternoon when no one else would bother. I'd charge a fair price, always, because that's how my daddy taught me. You work hard, you provide. That's what I did. Provided for my wife, bless her soul, and for David and Susan. Now, with Martha gone too long, my world had shrunk to this armchair in David's living room. A big, comfy chair, sure, but it felt like a prison. The pain, oh, the pain! It was a constant dull hum at first, then a roar. Thick purplish ropes of varicose veins snaked all over my calves. They swelled up like balloons filled with mud. Every step, every tiny movement, felt like trying to lift a whole truck. I'd grab the armrests of this chair, my knuckles white, just to push myself up. It was shameful, really. A man who used to lift engine blocks with his own strength now couldn't stand without a fight. My doctor, Dr. Miller, not related to me, mind you, he'd tried everything. Pills for circulation that didn't do a lick of good. Tight elastic socks that squeezed so hard I thought my legs would pop. Monthly blood tests, always more blood, more money drained from my pension, and no answers. It only got worse, every single day, a little worse than the last. Then came the names. Turtle, they'd call me. David, my oldest, and Susan, my daughter. They'd laugh, sometimes right to my face, sometimes in hushed voices just out of earshot. Look at Dad, moving like a turtle. It wasn't a mean laugh, not really. More like a joke they thought was funny, but it cut deeper than any leg pain ever could. I remembered changing their diapers, staying up all night with their fevers, saving every penny to buy them what they needed. Their little faces, so trusting. I'd sacrificed so much. Now I was just a burden. A joke. It is what it is, I'd tell myself. But it didn't make the sting go away. One afternoon, I was in my usual spot, staring out the window at the cars going by. David was on the phone, talking to Susan. His voice, usually so careful around me, was different, louder. "Dad's complaining about his legs again," he grumbled, and then a little chuckle. "I'm leaving him home. The party's for people who can stand up." My heart just dropped. It felt like it hit the floor and shattered into a million pieces. I just pretended to be asleep, my eyes squeezed shut. Their laughter, it just bounced around in my head, echoing and echoing. That was a bad day. One of the worst. That day, the one with the party, that was the start of something truly awful. 4 long, lonely months. David and Susan would leave in the morning, their voices fading as they drove off. And then nothing. Just silence. They'd come back only at night. I ate alone. I slept alone. My days were just a blurry mess of watching cars pass by the window, counting the hours, feeling the pain. I truly believed I would die right there in that chair, a silent, immobile burden until my last breath. The pain in my legs, it just kept getting worse. Like a fire, a burning fire that never ever went out. Sometimes I'd wonder if my mind was playing tricks on me, if I was just making the pain feel worse than it truly was. Old age, you know. It messes with your head, Time flies, they say, but for me it just dragged its heavy feet. But then, after about 2 months of this misery, a chilling pattern started to show itself. My legs, already a torment, seemed to flare up with a real vengeance after dinner, every evening. The meals David or Susan made, they said they were bland, healthy, just right for my condition. They started to taste different, suspiciously salty, sometimes unnaturally sweet, like too much sugar in a plain tea, or enough salt to make your tongue curl. I'd eat it, because what else was I going to do? And without fail, the next morning my legs would feel like lead, swollen even more than usual, throbbing with a sharper, more insistent pain, a meaner pain. When I tried to mention it to David, like, "Son, this food, it tastes a bit strong tonight," he'd just give a vague nod, his eyes glued to his phone, like always. He'd wave his hand, dismissing my concerns. "It's just the low-sodium stuff, Dad. You're not used to it." But it didn't taste low-sodium. It tasted off. I started watching them. When they cooked, when they brought the food, David always brought my plate last. Susan would put my water glass down, always with a sweet syrupy smell coming from it. My legs, they'd throb and ache something fierce. And they'd look at me, their faces blank. My son, my daughter, the ones I changed diapers for. It made my stomach turn. Could it be? Was I going crazy? My wife, Martha, she always said I had a good head on my shoulders. A mechanic needs to be sharp, needs to notice details. And I was noticing things, small things, like how David always made sure I had my special glass of iced tea, always sweetened, and then he'd just watch me drink it. Or how Susan would heap on extra mashed potatoes, saying it was for my strength, but they were always swimming in something that tasted too salty. One evening, I tried to skip the tea. "No, thank you, son," I said, pointing to the water jug. David's face, it just changed. Not angry, not really, but stiff. "Dad, it's good for you. Doctor said to stay hydrated." He pushed the glass right into my hand, a little too hard. "Drink up." I drank it. And the next morning, my legs were worse than ever. I mean, truly awful. It was almost like it was planned. The pain, the taste, the way they watched me. Alone in my chair, the sun setting outside, painting the window orange, I started connecting the dots. It wasn't just them neglecting me. It wasn't just the cruel jokes, the mockery. It felt like something more, something deliberate. A slow, insidious push. I didn't know how or why, but a terrible suspicion began to bloom in my weary heart. It was a fear I couldn't shake, a gut feeling, the kind of feeling you get when a timing belt just sounds wrong before the whole engine seizes. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just old age playing tricks on me anymore. Someone was making me worse, and the person I trusted most was right in front of me. A dor, ela só parecia piorar depois que eu jantava. Eu já tinha notado isso. Depois de 2 meses de ser tratado como um velho inútil, largado na cadeira, comecei a ver um padrão. Era sempre depois da comida que David ou Susan me davam. Eles diziam que era comida saudável, sem sal. Mas não era. Às vezes, tinha um gosto tão salgado que fazia minha boca secar. Outras vezes, doce demais, como se tivessem jogado um monte de açúcar em algo que não precisava. Eu comia, claro, o que mais eu ia fazer? E sem falta, na manhã seguinte, minhas pernas pareciam blocos de chumbo, mais inchadas do que o normal. A dor, a dor! Pulsava mais forte, mais insistente. Uma dor malvada. Quando eu tentava falar, David mal me ouvia. Filho, essa comida está um pouco forte esta noite, eu dizia. Ele só balançava a cabeça, os olhos grudados no telefone. Sempre grudados no telefone. Ele acenava com a mão, me dispensando. É só a comida sem sódio, pai. O senhor não está acostumado. Mas não tinha gosto de sem sódio. Tinha gosto. Errado, forçado. E tinha o jeito que eles agiam. David sempre trazia meu prato por último. Susan colocava meu copo de água. E sempre vinha aquele cheiro doce, de xarope. E minhas pernas, elas latejavam e doíam feito o diabo. Eles me olhavam, seus rostos sem expressão. Meu filho, minha filha. As crianças que eu troquei fraldas, que eu amei mais que tudo. Meu estômago embrulhava só de pensar. Será que eu estava ficando louco? Velhice, sabe? Ela prega peças na gente. Mas Marta, minha esposa, ela sempre disse que eu tinha a cabeça no lugar. Um mecânico tem que ser esperto, tem que notar os detalhes. E eu estava notando coisas, pequenas coisas, como David sempre se certificava de que eu tomasse meu copo especial de chá gelado, sempre adoçado, e ele me observava enquanto eu bebia. Ou como Susan punha um monte de purê de batata no meu prato, dizendo que era para minha força, mas sempre estava nadando em algo que parecia sal demais. Uma noite eu tentei não pegar o chá. Não, obrigado, filho, eu disse, apontando para a jarra de água. O rosto de David mudou. Não bravo, não exatamente, mas duro, rígido. Pai, faz bem para o senhor. O médico disse para se manter hidratado. Ele empurrou o copo na minha mão. Um pouco forte demais. Bebe logo. Eu bebi. E na manhã seguinte, minhas pernas estavam piores do que nunca. Quer dizer, horríveis. Quase como se fosse tudo planejado. A dor, o gosto, o jeito que eles me olhavam. Sozinho na minha cadeira, o sol se pondo lá fora, pintando a janela de laranja, comecei a ligar os pontos. Não era só negligência. Não eram só as piadas cruéis. Parecia algo mais. Algo de propósito. Um empurrão lento e perigoso. Eu não sabia como, nem porquê, mas uma suspeita terrível começou a crescer no meu coração cansado. Era um medo que eu não conseguia afastar. Um pressentimento. O tipo de pressentimento que a gente tem quando uma correia de sincronismo faz um barulho esquisito antes do motor pifar de vez. E eu sabia lá no fundo que não era mais a velhice me pregando peças. Alguém estava me piorando, e a pessoa em quem eu mais confiava estava bem na minha frente. A desconfiança se transformou numa verdade fria e dura. Aqueles meus filhos não estavam só me ignorando. Eles estavam me envenenando, devagar. Cada refeição, que eles diziam ser para minha circulação ruim, vinha com um doce inexplicável, que dava até nojo, ou um sal que dominava tudo. Depois de comer, David fazia questão que eu ficasse sentado. Ele me ajudava a me ajeitar na poltrona, com um empurrão firme, quase mandão, para garantir que eu não me mexesse por horas. Aí sim, minhas pernas pegavam fogo de dor, as veias roxas latejavam, minhas panturrilhas inchavam de um jeito assustador. Tentei recusar alguns pratos, ou pedir só água pura em vez do chá gelado doce, mas David ficava bravo, me chamava de ingrato ou de velho gagá. É para o seu próprio bem, pai, David insistia, mas o sorriso dele nunca chegava nos olhos. Comecei a guardar anotações na minha cabeça, tudo escondido. Cada ingrediente, cada vez que a dor piorava, cada comentário de desprezo. Eu não estava imaginando. Isso era de propósito. Foi numa terça-feira de sol que Mrs. Henderson, uma vizinha animada de 75 anos, enfermeira aposentada da comunidade, apareceu com uma torta de maçã fresquinha. David, que geralmente não gostava das visitas dela, tinha saído para resolver umas coisas. Mrs. Henderson, vendo minhas pernas cada vez mais inchadas e meus olhos tristes, perguntou baixinho: Frank, querido, essas pernas estão piores do que nunca. O senhor está se mexendo? Eu estava com medo, mas desesperado. Contei para ela. Falei das comidas estranhas, da insistência de David para eu não me mexer, da dor que só aumentava. O rosto gentil da Mrs. Henderson endureceu. Isso é muito esquisito, Frank. Nenhum médico diria para não se mexer com problemas de circulação, especialmente com varizes. Ela tirou um caderninho pequeno e meio gasto. Deixa eu te contar. Quando eu era enfermeira, a gente tinha uns truques simples que hoje em dia ninguém lembra mais. Aí ela me explicou o que eles estavam fazendo. Frank, muito sal faz o corpo segurar água. Isso incha demais as veias e a dor fica insuportável. E ficar parado é a pior coisa que você pode fazer para as veias doentes. Seus filhos estão te piorando, Frank. De propósito, as palavras da Mrs. Henderson me atingiram como um soco. Meus próprios filhos conspirando contra mim. Por quê? Como se fosse combinado. Enquanto Mrs. Henderson enchia a xícara de chá, meus olhos caíram num documento amassado, meio escondido embaixo de umas revistas na mesa de centro. Era um papel de seguro de vida. $450 mil. As letras grandes gritavam: beneficiários David Miller, Susan Miller. A apólice de 6 meses atrás dizia que o pagamento seria 180 dias depois do diagnóstico de doença grave. Meu diagnóstico de problemas sérios nas veias tinha quase 6 meses. E bem ali, no mesmo monte de papéis, tinha uma minuta de escritura da minha casa amada na Rua Carvalho, a herança da família, esperando minha assinatura. Mrs. Henderson viu meu rosto pálido e cinzento e seguiu meu olhar. Frank, ela sussurrou, a voz cheia de uma raiva contida. Eles estão tentando apressar as coisas. Não é só dinheiro, é? Eles querem a sua casa também. A assinatura final da escritura e do pedido de seguro estava marcada para dali a 48 horas. A dor da traição era 1000 vezes pior do que qualquer dor física. Meus filhos, meu próprio sangue, estavam esperando eu morrer e até me ajudando a chegar lá por $450 mil e uma casa. Uma calma e dura decisão tomou o lugar do meu desespero. Eu não ia morrer como uma tartaruga. Naquela mesma tarde, com a ajuda da Mrs. Henderson, comecei meu contra-ataque silencioso. Frank, ela instruiu, a voz firme, mas cheia de incentivo. Suas panturrilhas são as bombas para suas veias. Vamos fazê-las funcionar de novo, sem que eles saibam. Ela me mostrou os exercícios. Você precisa fazer 20 repetições, de flexão e extensão dos dedos do pé. Depois, 20 repetições, de flexão e extensão do tornozelo. Depois disso, 20 repetições usando o peso do seu corpo, para levantar calcanhar e ponta do pé. E, muito importante, desextensões de joelho para cada perna, segurando por 2 segundos lá em cima, e 10 flexões de quadril para cada perna. Ela frisou: faça isso várias vezes ao dia, Frank. Você vai sentir a diferença, um verdadeiro bombeamento nas veias. Espere uma melhora visível em 8 a 21 dias, se fizer certinho. Eu comecei na mesma hora, fazendo 3 sessões por dia, tudo escondido debaixo de um cobertor na minha poltrona. Ainda gemia alto quando David ou Susan entravam, exagerando meu desconforto. Até derrubava coisas de propósito, deixando que eles me ajudassem a sentar de novo na cadeira, para que eles continuassem acreditando que eu era um inútil. Enquanto isso, Mrs. Henderson tinha me trazido um gravador de voz pequeno e discreto, escondido debaixo da minha almofada. Comecei a gravar os comentários desprezíveis de David e Susan, as conversas sussurradas deles no telefone e, o mais condenatório, as discussões sobre minha expectativa de vida diminuindo. Comecei a esconder partes da minha comida excessivamente salgada ou doce, anotando as quantidades e minhas medidas das pernas, criando um diário detalhado. David e Susan, percebendo que meu declínio não estava sendo tão rápido quanto esperavam, ficaram mais impacientes, pressionando mais abertamente pela assinatura da escritura. David até trouxe um tabelião para casa. Só para resolver isso logo, pai. Assim o senhor não precisa mais se preocupar. Sei. David e Susan tinham marcado a assinatura da escritura e dos papéis finais do seguro para dali a apenas 48 horas. Eles achavam que eu ainda era uma tartaruga presa na minha cadeira, um peso lento e moribundo. Mas enquanto eu fazia meus exercícios em segredo, minhas pernas, embora ainda parecessem inchadas para meus filhos, já estavam mais leves, a dor latejante diminuindo de mansinho. Eu segurava o gravador de voz escondido, cheio de provas irrefutáveis da ganância deles. Eu não era mais só uma tartaruga. Eu era um jabuti. Devagar, mas com certeza, carregando uma bomba nas costas, pronto para explodi-la. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story will travel. Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Attorney Charles Davis's office on the 5th floor of the Sterling Building, a place that usually hummed with the quiet rustle of important papers, now held a strange tension. The scent of polished mahogany mixed with a subtle, sharp tang of unease. David, my oldest son, sat across from me at the large desk, dressed in a sharp suit, a confident smirk playing on his lips. Susan, my daughter, perched on the arm of my wheelchair, her hand resting on my shoulder in a gesture I now knew to be purely performative. Across from us sat Mr. Jenkins, the notary public, his pen poised over the stack of documents that would seal my fate, or so they thought. Attorney Davis himself was there, looking as stoic as ever. But then the door opened again. David's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion that quickly morphed into outright alarm. My eyes met not just Attorney Davis, but also those of Mrs. Henderson, her kind face now etched with grim determination. Next to her stood a woman in the uniform of the local sheriff's department, Deputy Sarah O'Connell, her presence an undeniable shock. And then a renowned vascular specialist from St. Jude's Hospital, Dr. Evelyn Reed, stepped in, her gaze clinical and unwavering. David stammered, his eyes darting to the sheriff's uniform, his voice cracking. "Mrs. Henderson? What are you doing here?" Susan's face paled, her grip tightening, but not on my shoulder, on the arm of my wheelchair. A desperate, almost possessive clutch. I, who had arrived slumped in the wheelchair, feigning frailty, pushed myself up. Slowly, deliberately, I stood. The wheelchair rolled back a fraction of an inch as I released its arms. My legs, once concrete blocks, were now firm beneath me. I took a step, then another, walking towards the heavy mahogany desk with a steady, unyielding gait. I felt years younger, the pain in my calves a distant echo. The notary's jaw dropped. David recoiled, bumping into Susan. I looked at David, then at Susan, my eyes unwavering, cold, devoid of any past affection. The turtle had shed its shell. Without a word, I reached under the cushion of the armchair I had just vacated. With a practiced, subtle motion, I pulled out the small black voice recorder. I placed it on the polished surface of the desk, its unassuming presence belying the damning secrets it held. I pressed play. The room filled with hushed, venomous whispers, made metallic and clear by the recording. "He's barely hanging on, David. Just get him to sign." Susan's voice, shrill with impatience, filled the air. Then David's, calm and chilling, followed. "The policy kicks in, honey. 180 days post-diagnosis. He's almost there. Just keep him still, keep the salt high. He won't last another week if we're consistent." The notary's pen clattered to the floor, echoing the silence that had fallen over the room. David stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. I then produced a meticulously kept logbook, its pages filled with dates, food items, and measurements, all painstakingly recorded in my own hand. "Here are the daily logs of what you fed me," I stated, my voice clear and steady, devoid of its usual tremor. "My calf circumference, David, swelling from 15 inches to 19 inches after your special salty meals. My blood pressure, consistently spiking after your sweet iced tea." I pushed the logbook across the table towards Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed stepped forward, her voice clinical and damning. Mr. Miller's symptoms were indeed exacerbated by a deliberate regimen of high sodium intake and restricted movement, leading to severe water retention and dangerous pressure on his veins. This, coupled with the explicit knowledge of his pre-existing condition, points to a clear intent to accelerate his decline. A loud, desperate rustle, and David lunged forward, trying to snatch the recorder. But Deputy O'Connell was quicker, securing him firmly before he could reach the device. "And this," I continued, producing the crumpled life insurance policy document and the unsigned deed transfer for my beloved Oak Street home. "You wanted $450,000 and my house. My death, expedited for a payday." David, now restrained, his face contorted with panic and desperation, pleaded, "Dad, what are you doing? I'm your son. Susan is your daughter. You're going to send your own children to prison after everything we've been through." His eyes, wide with a calculated anguish, sought to evoke the old paternal affection. Susan, tears streaming down her face, echoed, "Please, Dad, don't do this to us. We're your family." I met David's gaze, my own eyes steely, unwavering. I worked 45 years under the hood of cars, oil and grease permanently stained into my hands, to provide a decent life, to keep a roof over our heads. You tried to murder me with salt, and forced immobility to steal $450,000 in my home. My son died the day he started poisoning his own father for money. You, David, and you, Susan, are just strangers wearing the faces of my children. You chose greed over family, and now you will face the consequences of that choice." My words hung heavy in the air. A final, irreversible severance. Deputy O'Connell acted without hesitation. She formally placed David and Susan under arrest for attempted murder and aggravated financial fraud. Both were led out of the office, struggling and shouting, their desperate pleas ignored by the stony faces in the room. Attorney Davies, visibly shaken, began packing his papers. Mr. Jenkins, the notary, immediately suspended all the deed transfer documents, stamping them annulled in bold red ink. The office fell into a profound silence, broken only by my own steady breathing, finally, truly tranquil. David Miller and Susan Miller were swiftly convicted of attempted murder and aggravated financial fraud. David received a sentence of 15 years in state prison, and Susan 12 years, both to be served in maximum security. David lost his real estate accreditation, and Susan's nursing registration was permanently revoked. They were ordered to pay a combined restitution of $600,000 to cover my legal fees, my past medical expenses, and punitive damages. My immediate family, horrified by the revelations and the public scandal, publicly disowned them. Their names became synonymous with deceit and avarice in our small community, forever erasing any social standing they once held. They lost everything they had sought to gain, and more. David is now serving his sentence at San Quentin State Prison, where he receives no family visits. Susan is incarcerated at Chowchilla State Prison, a lonely existence far from anyone who ever claimed to care for her. Now, at 74 years old, 2 years after that fateful Tuesday in the attorney's office, my life is completely transformed. I wake every morning at 6 o'clock, my legs feeling light and strong. I walk 2 miles along the riverbank, the brisk morning air invigorating me. My calves, once swollen and purple, are now lean and resilient. My chronic venous insufficiency symptoms, once debilitating, are now almost entirely managed through my daily exercises and a carefully controlled low-sodium diet. I no longer need a cane. My steps are firm and confident, a stark contrast to the shuffling steps of the turtle I once was. Dr. Evelyn Reed, who continued to oversee my health, marvels at my progress. My calf circumference is now back to 15 inches, and my venous pain is a distant memory. I dedicated the $600,000 restitution to establishing the Henderson Legacy Foundation, named in honor of Mrs. Henderson, my steadfast ally and a true angel. The foundation's mission is to educate seniors on self-care for venous health and to provide a helpline for elder abuse detection, ensuring no other senior endures what I did. My cherished Oak Street home, which David had coveted, is now the bustling headquarters of the foundation. I give monthly workshops demonstrating the precise exercises Mrs. Henderson taught me, 20 repetitions of toe flexion and extension, 20 repetitions of ankle flexion and extension, 20 repetitions with body weight for heel and toe raises, 10 knee extensions for each leg, holding for 2 seconds, and 10 hip flexions for each leg. These simple movements, performed consistently, have empowered hundreds of seniors to take control of their health. We've helped over 500 families identify signs of elder abuse and secure their well-being. I feel a profound sense of peace, surrounded by a community of gratitude and genuine affection. Sometimes when I'm alone in my old garage, now repurposed into a small community workshop for teaching basic car maintenance to young people, I think of the Frank Miller of 2 years ago, the old man who believed his body had betrayed him, who trusted the lies of those who should have protected him. Today, I know my body was never the problem. It was trying to warn me all along. I just wasn't listening. I found a renewed purpose, a vibrancy I thought was lost to old age. I help others, I laugh, and I live each day with intention. My old hands, still stained with grease, now help build futures, not just fix engines. David and Susan wanted to bury me alive for a house and $450,000. But at 74, I not only reclaimed my life, but built a thriving legacy, proving that some battles aren't just about survival, but about teaching the world what true strength and true family really mean. The vengeance most silent is that which needs no sugar, no salt, just a basin of warm water, and faith in oneself. And if you stayed with me until the end, leave a comment letting me know what you thought of the story and what kinds of stories you'd like to read more of. Thank you so much for being here. See you in the next emotional story.